Have you ever set out on this really determined quest for some historical facts, only to just hit a massive, unexpected brick wall? Yeah, it happens to the absolute best of us. We're digging into history, right? We want to understand the human struggle, the triumphs, the crazy tensions of the past. But sometimes, that access is just unceremoniously cut off. Bam. And, when that happens, we often find that pivoting to epic, cinematic storytelling can actually teach us just as much about tension, heroism, and truth as any dry textbook ever could. So in today's explainer, we're going to look at two very different types of shields. One is a totally modern digital barrier, and the other, a mythical guardian. And we're going to see exactly how tension is built, held, and finally released. Okay, so our journey actually begins with a ridiculously frustrating modern barrier. I was diving into some research, looking up Queen Victoria's role in the British Empire. I went over to the historic Royal Palace's website, totally ready for these sweeping accounts of 19th century rule. And instead, I got greeted by this cold, robotic text, waiting for www.hrp.org.uk to respond, performing security verification. I mean, seriously, we're out here seeking the grand, sprawling drama of historical empires, and we literally get halted by a Cloudflare prompt looking for bots? It's a literal digital wall that has suddenly and completely blocked our access to the facts. And then the security check finishes, but the history still completely hidden behind this impenetrable digital fortress. It's like staring at a blank white stone wall covered in thorns, just holding back the flow of history. You look at it and realize, okay, well, this is a dead end for our factual research today. But here is the truly beautiful thing about the pursuit of knowledge. When literal history is locked away, we absolutely do not have to stop learning. We can pivot. When the hard facts are obscured, we can just turn to mythic, cinematic literature to explore those exact same overarching themes. Empire, human struggle, the incredibly heavy burden of leadership, it's all still there. Which brings us to a pretty fascinating question, one that kind of forces us to rethink how we consume stories in the first place. When facts are hidden behind a firewall, where do we find epic history? Okay, let's dive into this, because our second source document provides a really brilliant answer. It's a manuscript that purposefully trades the dry, factual recounting of empires for a deeply evocative, highly cinematic experience. So let's leave our modern digital frustrations behind us, shall we, and step into a world of rich prose, mythical stakes, and masterfully crafted atmosphere. Section 1. The UV Empire's Shadow. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this manuscript, titled The Black Warrior, acts as a masterclass in building immense, palpable cinematic tension without ever relying on graphic violence or bloodshed. Just look at the sheer visual weight of our central figure here. You see an imposing, heavily armored knight, wrapped in shadows, resting his hands on a massive glowing blade. And your brain instinctively expects, well, carnage. But this text totally subverts that expectation. For 15 years, he has been Queen Nemo's unwavering protector. His role isn't to slaughter. It's this deeply nonviolent protective presence. He stands ready not as a weapon of malice, but as a silent, unyielding shield for his queen. Let's map out the timeline for a second, because context is literally everything when you're trying to build tension. 15 long years have passed since the traumatic fall of King Eric of UV. So that's a decade and a half of peace. Right now, we're in the present dawn, which is this fragile, quiet moment where Queen Nemo is standing atop her palace balcony, fully grown into this regal, fearless leader. But just over the horizon, the impending future arrives. Roman banners appear. And notice how the text describes their approach. They don't just march. They move with the distant, rhythmic hum of an approaching storm. It sets the stage absolutely perfectly for the clash to come. Section 2. The Symphony of Tension. As the threat of the Roman Empire creeps closer to the city, the author does something incredibly effective. They slow the pacing right down. We are forced to just sit in the heavy atmosphere of this impending clash. It's the proverbial calm before the tide, right? Where every single detail feels sharply heightened. And in the midst of this gathering, rhythmic storm, Queen Nemo descends the palace steps to address her tense citizens. She raises her hand, and her voice rings out. Stand strong. Today we are tested, not by swords, but by courage, not by fire, but by heart. This quote is so crucial, you guys. It serves as the profound emotional anchor for the entire narrative. She's explicitly telling her people that this coming conflict, it's a profound test of character and endurance. And this brilliantly illustrates the thematic contrast at play throughout the whole piece. On one side, we have the typical tropes of a conventional historical fight. You know the ones: swords, fire, malice, a literal whirlwind of destruction, leaving nothing but ruin. But on the other side, we have what this story actually delivers: cinematic tension built entirely on courage, heart, presence, and what the text beautifully calls a symphony of motion. The Romans aren't depicted as mindless monsters here. They approach with the inevitability of fate itself. The author focuses our attention on the sway of the banners, the sun glinting off the armor. It's teaching us that survival, especially in the face of an empire, is really about timing and the sheer will to endure the storm.
Section 3. The Silent Sacrifice.
As we enter Chapter 4, the climax finally unfolds. And again, it happens not with a barrage of violent sword strikes, but through fiercely methodical protective actions. Let's break this down step by step. As the enemy tide surges forward, the Black Warrior doesn't launch some furious offensive attack. First, he simply moves to stand directly in the Queen's path. Second, he acts as a literal shield, and he's protecting her not just from physical blades, but from the immense psychological weight of the moment as the world slows down. Third, with this unexpected, quiet grace, he creates a clear path for her to ascend the palace tower to safety. And finally, he fulfills his silent promise as a guardian. You see, he isn't there to single-handedly conquer the entire Roman army. He's there to give Queen Nemo the space she needs to survive, so she can carry the unbroken spirit of the UV Empire forward.
Section 4. A Legacy of Grace.
In the poetic resolution of our story, Queen Nemo finally reaches the highest balcony of the tower. Standing there as a beacon above the storm, completely unbroken, she looks down at the vast panorama of her city, and she watches the fleeting shadow of her guardian in the courtyard below. The text gives us this incredibly striking image. She sheds a single tear of profound reverence. So the crucial point is that this fundamentally redefines heroism. Heroism is a quality measured not in strikes, not in kills, and definitely not in the damage you can inflict. Rather, it's measured in the grace, presence, and devotion you display in the face of inevitable trials. The Guardian basically becomes a living legend, leaving behind this beautiful cinematic tapestry of loyalty that echoes across generations. We started this explainer a little frustrated, didn't we? Blocked by a literal firewall keeping us from cold, textbook historical facts. But by pivoting our attention to this cinematic epic, we actually uncovered a much deeper, much more resonant truth about human resilience and the poetry of devotion. Which leaves me with a final provocative thought for you to ponder as we wrap up. How will your legacy be measured? When the storm inevitably comes, will you be remembered for the fierce battles you fought, or by the grace, presence, and devotion you showed to those you protect? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating narrative with me today. Keep looking for the deeper story, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.